So we've already addressed some of the ways that political communication and politics have changed with the advent of the internet, right? Comparing the pre-internet to post-internet era. Now we want to take a look at how the internet has really affected media in general, so media before and after the internet. And we're going to do so by looking initially at the powers of the media, and there are really four key powers that we'll address. We'll look at changes in media over time and talk about a few of the different trends that we see as we look at changes in media and changes in political communication over time. And then finally we'll address where we are today. So let's start with the powers of the media. And as I said, there were four key ones that we're really going to be looking at. The first one is oversight, sometimes referred to as the watchdog role of the media. And there's no doubt that the news media is an institution in the United States that monitors the actions of both political elites, political actors, and political organizations. That is really what this oversight function really is. Watchdog journalism, as it is often referred to, is often described as the independent scrutiny by the press of activities by the government, business, and other public institutions, large companies, large corporations, or in our case, many areas of the government that impact a huge number of people around the country. The idea here is that the journalists are trying to document, question, and investigate the activities of these organizations with the goals of providing the public and officials with timely information on issues of public concern. This whole process grows out of what is referred to as the adversarial relationship. An adversarial relationship is describing the relationship between politicians or elites, sometimes business elites, and the media, and journalists in particular. Investigative reporting, which is at the key, at the centerpiece of this adversarial relationship, is the search by journalists for hidden evidence of social ills, official deception, and institutional corruption. And uncovering those are often seen as some of the highlights, some of the big successes of historical muckraking as well as investigative journalism. We can obviously look to Watergate as a particularly notable example of investigative journalism in the political realm. The challenge is that it's very difficult to find the right balance between the amount and the type of investigative reporting. On the one hand, if you have too much investigative reporting, it can really hinder officials and annoy the public. But on the other hand, too little can leave glaring holes. And the goal is to keep politicians and organizations accountable. The right balance is somewhere in between, and obviously I think that there is at best an inconsistent track record when it comes to the watchdog role, to the oversight function of the media. I think that most people would agree that more investigative journalism would be beneficial, cleaning up both political and business practices and hopefully keeping all of these parties accountable. Besides oversight, we have agenda setting. An agenda setting is essentially bringing attention to certain issues or problems. There is a limited agenda that politicians, that the public are actually going to pay attention to at any one time. So trying to decide what is actually on that agenda, what we're focusing on, is a constant challenge that politicians, that organizations are trying to influence, and the media plays a huge role in this. It used to be that the agenda was essentially set by the journalists themselves. They determined what news was. It was determined by what reporters, editors, and producers focused on. Today, as we get into the internet era, we have a much more interactive, much more dynamic, and much broader sense of who can decide what we should focus on. And so politicians in particular are trying to influence what is on the agenda, what we should focus on. We saw this recently with Ted Cruz, for instance, who is becoming fairly adept at grabbing the stage and grabbing the spotlight of the media attention, even if he's not necessarily influencing too many of his colleagues. And he is trying to shift what we are focusing on, trying to affect the agenda. It's also important to recognize that major events affect the agenda as well. The recent tragedies in Sandy Hook, for instance, brought gun control to the forefront. We started talking about it all the time. Politicians were active on it. President Obama was trying to push forward with some initiatives. The NRA clearly got involved. And that's something that we see all the time. Major events that happen and shift public attention, and therefore essentially shifting the public agenda as well.